Hello, everybody from New Zealand and from Australia. We've got Dragos here tonight, and I'm really excited about this because those who've been to the Kanban system design class before know the XIT case study, and also maybe from what we call the Blue Book. That's the original 2010 Kanban book from David Anderson. And he really worked with a lot of Kanban people who kicked off the whole movement internationally, and it's not been stopping since. It's evolving since. And when you read that case study, I always called him the superhero. And it was like, is there actually a human behind it? And now we've got the human actually today talking, and I'm so excited about this because David is really a great storyteller, and the story just really sounds great. So hello, Dragos, and thanks for joining. I am Silke from New Zealand. I've got the New Zealand Kanban meetup, and also am a accredited Kanban trainer, Kanban coaching professional in New Zealand. So all Kanban related questions for people in New Zealand, feel free to ping me anytime. And then we've got Dan from Australia.
Hi folks, how you doing?
Do you want to say?
Normally in Melbourne. I'm down in Torquay, down in the surf coast today, so just chilling out with the family and the holiday in the back of the caravan. But yeah, from everyone in Australia, hi and welcome. I think we've got folks from all over Melbourne, Sydney. I saw some folks from Perth. We might have someone from Adelaide, and maybe even someone from Tassie as well, I think. So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming along, and Silke, back to you.
Thank you. And I think I'll head straight over to Dragos.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for showing up. I'll get going, and then as I go, I have about 21 slides, and I will ask you questions. I think if you don't have any background noise, keep your mics open. So just to begin, I would ask you, can someone read the word on the screen, please?
Leadership.
Leadership.
All right, so kind of sounds the same everywhere. All right, well, we're starting the presentation, and there's a little animation and the new word popped up. Can someone read that as well?
Lead.
Lead.
All right, thank you. All right. So how many people are there people, even Silke or Daniel, are people who have taken formal classes? Do you think it's about half, more than half, less than half? Like, do people know about the Kanban method? Yes, maybe, no, okay. I see a couple of, yeah, I only see 6 figures on the video. Maybe that's how I have it set up. So some people did, some people didn't. If you have been through the class, the Kanban method is summarized as a set of principles and practices. There are 6 principles. 3 change management principles that you see here. I didn't list all of them. And then 3 practices, right? Sorry, 6 practices. 1 a.m. I'm not counting, I know this, but so what am I going to talk about this presentation about leadership? So with reference to the Kanban method, some of the things that are not clear, or people ask a lot of questions in workshops, is, what do you mean by encouraging acts of leadership at all levels? And then another question that comes up is about the scientific method and the correlation between these 3 things. The scientific method is very general. I will explain what it is for folks that are not familiar. And I will start with this principle, encouraging acts of leadership at all levels. So I will ask a question to the audience. It's a question that if you have been through the class, you might have heard it. We used to teach that in Train the Trainer. So I used to teach for Kanban University. I used to work with David. We created a lot of content that's being used in the classes you're taking today anywhere in the world. The question we're asking when we show this, and the picture is also on the cover of the book, is how many acts of leadership do you see? The answers are usually none, 1, or 4.
I see 1.
Okay, Rob sees 1. Anyone else? Anyone who thinks they
There are
see
some in
4?
the chat. There are some in the chat, and everybody says
Okay.
1 so far. And there is now Exton who says, that's Chris, I think, who says 4.
Okay.
And then Tim, but unfortunately, likely the true answer is 4.
Okay. All right. And then also recently in a workshop, someone said 0. Like there is no leadership statement there. Well, you know, you are correct, no matter what your answer is, because it may have to do with the way in which you work, may have to do with the context, may have to do. I have seen. I've worked and have done workshops all over the world. I have been to Australia. I have worked even, you know, like both with government there and with some private enterprises. And I remember that the answers tended to be mostly 1. When I go to the Nordic countries in Europe, the answer is mostly 4. People fail to see there is only 1 act of leadership, and they say, but of course there's 4 acts of leadership. So what we mean by this, we mean that we would like to see, we call it leadership at all levels. That's what the principle calls out. And we talk about leadership as an act, as an attitude, as ownership, not necessarily about a position. So in many organizations, it's an act of bravery to recognize and to say that, oh yeah, I'm stuck. Or someone to say, I'm too busy. Maybe the meaning is, I'm too busy, I can't take any more work, you have to wait. Or someone to say, I'm idle, right? I have worked with such clients, and it could be anywhere in the world. And then again, anywhere in the world, people come to a stand-up cheerful with a smile on their face, and they tell you this, all these things again. So you can have this type of conversation in a command and control organization. You can have this kind of conversation in an organization that is really, should we say, very collaborative, right? And further now, I'll introduce the concept of, you know, or answer the question of what is the scientific method. Typically, when you have this type of conversation and you say, well, let's do something about it. Well, something about what, right? Typically referred to as a problem. Could be the thing about being stuck, about being busy, or about being idle. So the scientific method has a series of steps. It starts with a question, right? On which could be, you know, what is the problem we're trying to solve? We want to do something about it. It doesn't mean we know what we're going to do. So let's continue the conversation. We may do some background research, construct a hypothesis, test it. We say, you know, experiment with it. Then we'll find out if the question we asked and the hypothesis, right, works or not. And then at some point, we have some sort of a result based on which we introduce a change. The change may be a new experiment, or maybe an adjustment we make to how we work or what we do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So we've talked about the concept of leadership at all levels. We've talked about the scientific method. So I want to bring something else. So this is an observation based on conversations I've had, again, really all over the world. Many times I'm being asked to tell people what to do, and I always refuse when they ask something. Just tell us what to do. We don't need training. Just come and design a process for us, and then we'll follow it. And obviously, we're going to have the same results as you've had. And my answer is no, I cannot help you with that. But I can help you ask better questions about your own work so you can understand it better. And as you are asking better questions, you will have better answers and you'll find better ways of working. So I will show you some examples of, I would say, top three. I created this slide thinking about, what are the three things that I see organizations struggling with. One is, how can we accelerate the delivery of solutions from concept to consumption? To simplify the language, I met with the CEO and his leadership team of an organization who bluntly told me, we can't get anything done anymore. We used to do things fast, so fast, I don't even remember how fast we were doing things. Then things started to take weeks, then they started to take months, and now it feels like unless someone escalates an issue, we can't get anything done anymore. And Axe used to work for that company. I met Axe at that company, the client, let's call it, and he was working there. So Axe, I'm talking about that leadership team. So we started with a workshop. We started with a 2-day workshop, and you will see some screenshots from that story, which is fairly recent. So another question is, how can we increase predictability? Our estimates are always wrong. Well, perhaps when something doesn't work, you should stop using it. The way I coach and I work with organizations is that instead of estimating, we really pay attention to the data. We collect, for example, lead times. We use cumulative flow diagrams. We use control charts. And we look at data, we look at past data, and we use it to build a forecast. That forecast typically has 80 to 85% accuracy, meaning that 8 out of 10 times we will be right about when we say that we're going to deliver something. Why is it 80 to 85%? Is because of standard distributions. And because of that data, it's kind of like, what is the meaning? What are we looking for? We talk about the tail, we talk about different things, but I don't want to talk statistics. I want to keep it to a weekend language, kind of like, how do we talk to friends when we meet with them on the weekend? And I like to keep teaching like that as well. And then finally, how can we strengthen relationship with customers? Meaning, I work for Adobe. I have colleagues, and when we talk about this, we talk about customer obsession. We are obsessed with customers and their results, right? And then this is one of the takeaways. I sent Silke a PDF that I guess she will distribute, right? So these are just examples. Any questions? And anyone who is really excited about Kanban, that they figured out some better questions after the training and better answers as a result of that. No? Okay, can I pick on Axe?
Yeah, absolutely pick on me. So one of the things that really stuck out for me in your original example there, which I think we'll get into a little bit more later, was the line of commitment. It was the, what do we do with it now? We'd have someone who absolutely loved to demo the product. He would, stand in front of CEOs at different places and demo and show all the fancy features and whatnot, then come back later and say, okay, well, we don't need this feature. We don't need that feature. We're not done making it. oh, that's okay, scrap it, we don't need it. But you've already started it. And so it's like, do we just take it out of the code? Oh, no time to take it out of the code. Just don't work on it anymore. That's what do we do when we have a whole bunch? And that was the question. What do we do with this now? What do you actually want us to do to wrap this feature up? How do you want us to handle this? And, to get our C-levels to say, just, don't do anything with it, showed them, oh, we're making demoware here. That was a wonderful time for me.
Part of the answer I've had for that leadership team wasn't right away, because I said, right, let me find out more about you and let me spend some time with your teams and learn more about what you do. And about a couple of weeks later, part of my answer to the CEO, and I will show you some of this data, was the fact that they've had a team of about 40 people who had 2,000 things in progress. And I'm rounding up. It's not an exact number. So if you imagine 40 engineers who are very capable, who have worked together for a while, who know the product really well, these are not people they hired yesterday. If you ask them to work on 2,000 things and you keep changing priority and you keep introducing something new almost every day, if not every other day for sure, they get confused. Even like when the CEO is asking them, hey, I had a bright idea. Can you do a spike, or can you do a proof of concept, or can you drop everything you do and do this for this customer? And no one is saying no to the CEO, right? And they ended up with 2,000 things in progress. So you will see what happened there shortly. So I'm talking about an engagement, right? I'm talking about the conversation we've had from the CEO. My response that I have to learn more about what you do and work with your team. So how do I learn that? I'm asking a lot of questions. We conduct workshops. In these workshops, we talk about sources of dissatisfaction, which are internal or external to a team. So I'm meeting with each team, and then I'm meeting pretty much with all the teams, right? And some of these teams are upstream from other teams, right? So a team may be a customer of another team, and they may release their work to a different team downstream. And in this case, there were 3 such parts of the organization. So I've talked to each part of the organization. You analyze demand. You analyze demand that comes from customers, and it's kind of, we refer to it as from concept to consumption. You also analyze demand for each team, right? What is the demand that the team has from another team? Then you talk about their capabilities to deliver, right? So not only what are the demands and what is the rate of demand, if you want, but also what is the rate of delivery. Then we model the workflow. The workflow is about how work is being done. Again, you talk about a team here, you talk about the team next to it, you talk about the team to the left of it, right? Upstream, downstream, midstream, and you look for patterns until you understand the workflow end to end. If some of you are lean practitioners, you probably know that is mapping a value stream, right? It's very similar to that. We identify classes of service. Classes of service, if you don't know what they are, is based on where most of you live. I'm pretty sure you've been on a plane to go somewhere else. It's like flying coach versus flying business versus flying first class and so on. So, how do we treat the work that we have in progress? How do we treat an expedite, for example? So an expedite is a class of service versus standard work. And sometimes there are relations about risk, right? And about the due date, and about what happens, about the cost of delay, if you want. What happens if we don't do it, or what happens if we don't do it now? And then finally, after we understand these things, we design a Kanban system with all its attributes, right? Including understanding how do we limit the work. So to go beyond this image, I will show you some examples around static. So we teach the principles and practices. Then we elicit narratives. This is where we ask teams, what is slowing you down, right? What are some reasons for discontent? And for example, some of these examples are, we don't know what the priorities are. The priorities are changing all the time. I couldn't do anything I was planning to do today. Another one is, everything is urgent. Another one is, who screams the loudest gets their work done. We are blocked by other teams. We don't have enough information, and yeah, we don't have enough information to finish what we start. So we're gonna start something new for which we don't have enough information to finish. So we're gonna start something new for which we don't have enough information to finish. So we're gonna keep starting. So if you're familiar, again, with some of the things we talk about in the Kanban world, you probably have heard the phrase, stop starting, start finishing, right? And what do you need to do in order to finish? And what processes do you need to put in place in order to accept work and to say, okay, this work is ready and we make a commitment now to deliver, right? Similarly, what do we hear from consumers of these services? Your team is always late, or your organization is always late. Your team is like a black box, or like the Bermuda Triangle. What are you working on? Where is my stuff? You don't understand our process, you're too slow to react, and you're blocking us from realizing the value or from getting what we're paying for from you as a provider. Are these common things? You know, based on what you work, you know, what's funny is I use this image when I teach static. I have not changed these questions. And some of these questions go all the way back to 2005 to Microsoft and XIT. And I thought this was a dysfunction that we've had until I started to work with other teams at Microsoft. And then after 10 years of consulting, working with more than half of Fortune 100 companies traded on the New York Stock Exchange and working pretty much on every continent, I never found a reason to change these questions. They never went out of style. So I think that's important to share with folks, because you may be in that situation. You may think everywhere I work is the same thing, different company, but the same stuff, different day. What you see here, these are actually 3 flip chart pages. So you know those big flip charts, and some of them have a sticky. They're like a post-it note, but they're, you know, huge. So this is where the 3 teams, each one of these represents a team. They were in different parts of the room when we had the workshop, and they list their own things, as you see here, internal and external. A team that talks about external feedback is, you know, what are their customers saying about them? Well, the team next to it, these are the people who are the customers of this team, right? In the middle. So these people now are saying, here is internally what is slowing us down. Here is what our customers say about us. And finally, these folks here, they are the customers of this team, right? So they are saying these things, about this team, but here is what they are saying that's slowing us down. And then again, externally, what is affecting us. And you can read this, but really for this company, the one where apps used to work, it was really about quality. It was about having too much work in progress. And for whoever was a customer of someone else, they complained about quality. I was not surprised to learn that when I said, what are you doing about quality? They said, well, what do you mean? You know, we've had some challenges. We had to let some people go. So we kind of reduced or eliminated the testing function. So they did not have a lot of quality control, and it really showed in their work. They believe they didn't need to have it, and then they brought it back in at some point. And then these are examples of different ways in which I work with teams to understand their demand rates, their delivery rates, their workflow. We can use different methods for mapping a workflow. We design the tickets and what information we want to have, whether we use Jira or other systems. And then all of a sudden we have a Kanban system, a Kanban board, and we start to have feedback loops, we call them. We start to have stand-ups, we start to have retrospectives, we start to have planning meetings. But pretty much it's all focused on the customers. As you see the customer here in this image, this little yellow silhouette, right? The customer wants something, whatever they want goes all the way up to here. And then within that organization, there are different silos or different groups, and something comes out, right? And the customer says, huh? Right? I wanted something, but this is not what I asked for, or maybe the quality is not there. So really, the focus is on the customer. It starts with the customer focus. So here is an example from that customer. This is already about halfway through the engagement. And by the way, I was not planning to have X. I haven't heard from X for a while. And I will reveal at some point to you how come he's here and why he's joining at such a late hour. Well, he joins because I invited him to, and he couldn't say no. This board has 3 swim lanes. This column, if you see my mouse cursor, this was the work in progress column. There are some columns before that, which is kind of a selection. These are the things they prioritize to work on. And then there is some decomposition in these columns. And then work goes through in progress. And then this is done stuff. And they finish things weekly. Remember that this is an organization, they said they couldn't get anything done. 2 months down the road, these are things, these tabs that you see here are things released every week. And now we have these 3 different teams, these 3 different work streams that have so much stuff pretty much falling off the board. Please understand, they're using Jira. They have all this in an electronic format, but they found fascinating to use the physical board, and they found it very productive, and they found it the conversations in front of the board very productive. So we'll come back to that. So now, when I started, I was only working with 1 team before I got the other 2 in there. And you see here a timeline of when I started, they had 2,000 things in progress. They quickly agreed that that didn't make any sense for less than 40 people to have 2,000 things in progress. That was this team here. We quickly reduced that to 400 to 200. Now, I would say in about 2 months or so, I don't remember exactly, we got to 24. How did we get to 24 and how did we keep it at 24? Very simple. We designed a physical board. The in progress column had 4 rows. These green stickies here indicate what was going to be in each row. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Dragos, we're
yes.
having trouble. We just can't see your cursor at the moment. Can you just check that you've got the right screen there?
I have multiple screens and it is still 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for pointing out. Can you see my cursor now?
That's better. Thank you.
All right. So this is the in progress column. I apologize for that. I was looking at the monitor in front of me, which is huge, and I forgot about this little tiny monitor down here. So now you're going to see my bald head, but at least you'll see my cursor as well. Look at the cursor. So here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are, think of them as lanes within the in progress column. And then they have 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 by 4 is 24. They can never have more than 24 things in progress. Now look at this. All these people, they have right now only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And this looks like one of the 15 has quite a few different things attached to it. But that's a very long way from 2,000, from 400, from 200 things, right? So now let's look at the results. What you see there is 6 and 6, 7 and 6, 8 and 8. It's really the breakdown between break fix issues and features. So they release 6 things and they have 6 quality issues. So about half, about 50% of what they do are break fix issues introduced by the features they release. And all of a sudden we clean up Jira, we clean up the board, and we start with very little work in progress. And in about, I would say, I was there for only 4 months, and I was only going on site 1 week on, 1 week off. And with that little amount of involvement from me, this organization managed to get to about 59 things per week. Okay. Then you see the numbers go down. So I will explain what happened there. Because this team got so hyper productive, and part of that realization, I was working with the CTO, we realized at some point, we're having a conversation and I was asking questions. And I told him, I said, hey, Flavio, it seems to me that you got really fast and you deliver a lot of stuff, but it doesn't sound like these are the right things to work on. You're fixing, or you're dealing with a lot of issues that need to be solved differently, like as a root cause versus dealing with the symptoms. And he agreed. So to make a long story short, they took about 30% of this team and they started them on the bottom row here to deal with a certain priority, a certain type of work, which we called it next gen. So this bottom lane was called next gen work, and it took about 30% of the people who were working up in the first lane. I do not have data for this bottom swim lane, but what you see here in terms of product of throughput is the impact of taking 30% of the people, let's say 10 people, they got together. Now the 30 people that were left on the team were having this kind of results. So again, we talk about 42 things per week, 42 releases, and 41, 42 versus 12, 13 back here. Chris, do you have any recollection of what that work was? You were there for a while before you left.
Yeah, the next gen was, they were looking to streamline, not streamline, it was almost a remake of the original product. They wanted it better on tablets and not just a server backend, but more tablet or user interface stuff for it. So that's what they went to work on.
So we haven't said that, but this company was making software for fast food restaurants. It's pretty much the software that runs in the front, what they call the front office. When they take orders, they take payments, and then that goes to the back office, which was laying in the middle. And we realized that a lot of this work was pretty much about about a lot of the work. Let me bring the cursor down here. A lot of the work that was being done in the top lane, they were spinning wheels many times, or dealing with issues and problems and quality issues. So what the next gen team was doing was really dealing with root cause and coming with a different way of work, and different new features, replace the features so they don't have those issues anymore. Anyway,
so like for example, back office suite did payroll, inventory, scheduling, money was a huge one. When we split off for the next gen, it was okay, well, let's take inventory and let's reimagine how we do inventory better. And they split off and started just working on, okay, if we'd made a a microservice for just inventory, what would that look like? With the idea of, if we can get that streamlined, we can then fold it, destroy the old inventory system, fold the new back in, and then pick apart, some of the others. Inventory was always a mess.
And when I was, we didn't set this up, and I haven't spoken with Chris in a long time, but I did brief him earlier today on what I'm going to do and why I invited him. But you also mentioned about the money that and the outcome that the company had.
Yeah. So I was one of the last developers on this project while I was there, and we finally got it installed. Remember, up to this point, it'd been demoware. They'd demo it, say it was great, figure out new, ideas people wanted. So they'd go back and say, okay, we'll stop working on and work on this other thing because we want to demo that next. By the time I was done with it, we just finished putting it into 500 Oban Pond stores with millions of orders coming up the line each day, getting just-in-time reporting for the franchisees and the what do you call it? Store owners, store managers.
Here is something else that's interesting about this. The CTO knew that this is something he needed to do. So whatever it was done here by the next gen team in the bottom lane, he knew there was something they needed to do. Not only that, but they took a down payment from a customer. I didn't know about this until we were having dinner one night. But what he told me is like, I don't know how to give that money. I would love to give that money back and not be on the hook to deliver, because I don't see how we're going to deliver that thing. We've had 2 years to do it. We haven't even started, and it's due in about 6 months from now. And now I remember, it was that conversation that prompted me to say, why don't you take some people from front office and start working on it? And he said, it will never get done, Dragos. It will never get done. I said, do you realize the power? Do you realize the capacity you freed up within your organization? Do you see how much work you're doing here? What if we start, that was not what they hired me for, but I said, what if we start to look at what you need to deliver there? And we come up with something like an MVP. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but you just show something so powerful that you're going to knock their socks off. They're not going to judge you for the $2 million they gave you, and they're going to throw more money at you, but you have to show something. What is that something? That's what I challenge you to think about. And he was literally, he's like, there's no way we're going to pull this off. Well, we did. We started and we pulled it off. So here is the back office team, at least the people who showed at the stand-up. So you see the board, you also see next gen here, and you see that not much is done in next gen, right? You don't, sorry, mouse cursor again. You don't see much done in at the bottom there on the right side, right? So this indicates that this was earlier, before the previous screenshot that I was showing. And this gentleman is he's a dev manager. The folks up here on the left, at least the one sitting down, or maybe even this one, I don't know, but like the folks here on the left, lower left corner, they are in the front office. So it's a different organization, but they're here to answer a question. This is kind of early in the beginning. Different managers, I will show you. Over here on the wall, what you see, this image is coming from a projector. These are folks in Ukraine. So they were expanding and they were hiring some contractors in Ukraine. This is about 6 years ago, in 2016. I actually went to Ukraine in 2016 at the invitation of this vendor company to do similar workshops with them. So I was in Kharkiv for a week. Kharkiv or Kharkov, there's 2 ways of pronouncing it.
If I just may interject, everybody in that video, by the way, I talked to about a week ago, and they're all safe. Most of them on the Polish border.
You know, yeah. I've also been in contact with 1 or 2 of them, and I put them in contact with people that hire people in Ukraine and all sorts of stuff. So back to this, the conversation I remember, and I documented this at the time. Someone in Ukraine says, I'm stuck. And it was kind of a pattern. It wasn't the first time this was happening. The folks in Ukraine, some of them are relatively new. They're developers, but they're relatively new hires. That's different than the people in the room who actually built the system from scratch, and they knew it backwards, right? So the pattern of the conversation was that someone says, I'm stuck. Someone else, perhaps, in Charlotte, this was in Charlotte, North Carolina, would say, yeah, I need help too. someone would offer to help. He said, yeah, I can help these folks, but we need to reprioritize my work. And when he says that, talks about, you see how he's looking at the board and they're making trade-off conversations. So the manager says, okay, let's focus on value. John, what do you need first? Now, John is the gentleman with the hat. And really, he told me after the meeting, this is like the first time this question, the question from the manager, let's focus on value. John, what do you need first? John came to me and said, wow, this never happened before. They're asking me, their customer, what do I think is more valuable that I need and what we can prioritize to help the people who are unstuck. So again, you see the level of collaborative leadership that starts to happen when the work is in front of you. You know, I haven't said that yet, but the board has its own voice, right? And you can see on the board what you see the pink sticky notes on the board. You see some pink sticky notes, they kind of, you can see them from far away. And I apologize if someone is colorblind, but there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pink, big pink stickies. And then you see here some pink colors. These are sticky notes that are ripped in thirds. Why? That means these stickers here, they're not blocked, but the person working on them has been asked to work on something, perhaps an escalation, which is in an expedite row at the top of the column. Now understand that one of the screens on the wall is for Jira. These folks are not, you know, Neanderthals. They have Jira, they have electronic systems, but they found out as I was coaching them that it's better to have these conversations in front of a physical board than everybody to sit at their desk and do it, well, the way we've been working for the last 2 years. We figured out, I guess, but back then it was not productive to work like this. It was a lot more productive to get folks in a room. So what's next here? Let me see so the last animation here, this gentleman in the middle, he was the vice president of the back office. So he's asking the $1 million question, well, hold on a second, why do we have this problem again? It happened yesterday, it happened the day before, why do we have this problem again? And the answer came from someone in Ukraine who said, well, if we would have the proper training, if you would train us properly, especially around some of the things with some of the automation in Jira, we wouldn't have this issue, okay? So if you haven't noticed or recognized him because his back is turned towards us, that's Axe. And Axe works for NASA. He writes software that goes to the moon, he says, and I believe him. He just contacted me 2 days ago to ask for my address because he wants to send me a book that he wrote. And he calls it Is That Agile? Okay, I haven't got it yet. He'll send it to me sometime in May when it gets published. It's fresh being published. And I said, Ax, you know, it's funny you call me. In 2 days, I'm going to this meetup. I have a presentation and you're one of the pictures. And what do you think about joining? So we have not rehearsed this. You know, whatever he says is whatever he wants and whatever he wants to answer and what, you know, the truth is. And he accepted. So here you go, 6 years later, someone who worked on that team decided that he doesn't want to work in any other way, and he's going to write his own book about how he feels about work and how he wants to work. And in 2005, this is a picture of me and the team in India. This is the first time I went to lunch with them, my first trip to India. And we're outside the restaurant where we had our first dinner on the second day I was in India. For those of you who don't know the story or don't have all the details to the story, prior to going to India, I was asked by my manager at Microsoft to go and fire everybody and figure out how we're gonna actually hire people who can do something, because this team was considered not delivering anything similar to what the CEO was asking me. How can we get things done? And What happened in 9 months, this team got from delivering 3 things per quarter. I'm not going to explain all this mumbo jumbo here, the chart, mainly because a lot of you, if you have been through training, you probably know the story. But this team went delivering from 3 things per quarter to 47 things per quarter. And the lead time went from 155 days or 5 months, it went to 30 days. And at some point after these 9 months, another 6 months after the first 9 months, we were delivering between 5 and 21 days with 98% guarantee that we're going to deliver when we say we're going to deliver. We are not estimating at all. We are using forecasts. So this is a case study we presented in Barcelona in 2006, and it was what I call the genesis of Kanban. It's pre-Kanban. The book about the Blue Book was written in 2010. So in 2005, really what I was doing was I started to apply theory of constraints. I started to apply what evolved into those principles and practices that I was showing you earlier on the slide. David Anderson happened to be a contractor at Microsoft at the time, and I was reading this book here, the management, Agile Management for Software Engineering. And in here, he was describing the theory of constraints. So actually, I've learned about theory of constraints from a different book that David wrote. And at the time, no one really heard about it. The way I found it, I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I asked for books on Agile because I've heard about this Agile thing, right? 2004, 2005. I was also the first Scrum Master in Microsoft, and Scrum was not working with this team. I had a success story. I actually got a promotion for introducing iterative development in IT, and for the results we've got with iterative development. And then I started to work with this team. Like people call this type of work keeping the lights on, which is maintenance. It's sustained engineering. We are supporting over 100 systems in production, right? So yeah, so that's again another book. Then David wrote the Blue Book, and then David left, went to a company called Corbis. At the time, it was also owned by Bill Gates, and he was leading. He was director of software engineering. And one of the projects they've had was to deliver an $11 million SAP implementation for Corbis. Part of this implementation, they've had $2 million worth of work in progress every week. So after what David and I learned from the experience with the team at Microsoft, how would you manage delivery over an $11 million SAP implementation project with $2 million worth of work per week? Well, of course, on a whiteboard with sticky notes. There is no other way. Right? The other question is, how would you hold daily meetings with 30 or more people that represent about 120 people? There's 120 people working on the SAP implementation. But you need about 30 of them who represent all these different people, all these different teams. They're not on site. Many of them are off-site or in a different country. But there's 30 people with whom you have a meeting in 20 minutes, right? There you go. You can count. I didn't. But I know there are about 30 people, sometimes some days more, some days less. And 3 people worked there. One was David Anderson. And just like a theme for this presentation, he wrote a bunch of books since, following the results they've had. Another person was Dan Vacanti. Dan Vacanti was running these daily stand-ups. He's somewhere to the left of this picture here. And I know some of you know Dan Vacanti. He also wrote a fairly good book. It's really about metrics. He talks about the statistics and the science behind what we do. He also created Software Actionable Agile, and I saw that I have at least one colleague from Adobe. We've been using Actionable Agile for probably about 2 years, and now we're writing our own BI solution. So Dan Vacanti, and then was one more, Dominica De Grandis, who was also at Corbis, and she's very active in the DevOps field. and she also wrote a book. So it's very interesting about this method and this methodology, if you want, about that I refer to, a way to ask better questions and find better answers. How all these people, some of them never wrote books before. David is the only one who was an author. Acts, have you ever thought about, writing a book? Or I don't know. We'll find out if we have time for questions. So now the final question becomes, how would you rather work, right? You can work in different ways. You can believe that power comes from a position of authority, or you can believe that power is hold on a second. Yeah, it's a collective thing. So these things, this is not part of the method. This is really to ask again another question, right? If you have an option between working in a command and control fashion, or you have the option to work in a collaborative fashion, how and what would you choose? Work in a push system, work in a pull system. The funny thing about it, I could have come with different images, but the reason why I put the same picture for push, the same picture for pull, is that many times people are working in a command and control environment. They use a push system, meaning work is being pushed to people versus people pulling work based on their capacity to deliver. But they call it agile, and it's not. And when Axe reached out and asked me for my address to send me his book, and we started talking about it, I was laughing because that's what he writes about in his book. So you may say that I don't have a choice in how I work, and I would beg to differ. When I was at Microsoft and we had that case study, that what became the case study, I was prescribed to work in a very command and control way. The results were not there. I refused to fire anybody in India. I prefer to understand. And all of a sudden, we start to deliver completely different results. I mean, we cut everything in half. We cut the delivery times in half, and we doubled our productivity before even I heard of David Anderson and theory of constraints. But to go down to 155 days to 60 days lead time, that's something. Okay, fine. You go from 5 months to 2 months. I was pretty much as good as it gets, right? And then I learned about the theory of constraints. David and I become friends. We start to have conversations, and the rest is history. And again, collaborative leadership, right? So what are some of the collaborative leadership patterns? How are we doing on time, Silke?
I was gonna ping you because we are 2 minutes to the hour. And maybe just to the audience, if you do have to drop off, feel free to do so. We will keep going and there will be time for questions. So we are all good. But if you do have to drop off, feel free to do so.
I take responsibility for failing keeping track of time. So I'm closed. I'm on the last of the 2 slides. I have another metaphor for you in closing. And Silke has a handout if anybody wants anything from this presentation. And the metaphor here, I have a definition for the metaphor, and I'm using an example, like as our team is drowning in technical debt. So I will ask again for a volunteer to read this word.
Back to the start. Leadership.
All right. And again.
Lead.
All right. And one more time.
Oh, lead.
So in closing, my message to you is to lose the lead and lead instead. You don't want to go around and say leadership. You probably want to keep saying leadership. But in order to truly believe that you have acts of leadership, you have to take the lead out of leadership, right? So lose the lead, lead instead, focus, and that's pretty much the closing of the presentation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Lucy, let's
Dragos.
lead instead.
Yeah.
I also like the sentence that Dragos said a lot when we were preparing for the meetup, when he said, some people write books and some people help me, Dragos. How did you put it?
Well, there's two kinds of people. One kind who writes books and the other kind that the books are written about.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you see all these authors coming out of all these experiments, but it's really interesting, you know, some of the people who work there turned out to be successful CIOs, successful directors. The program manager from India from 2005, he's like a director level. At some point, he was doing sustain engineering for Sony Entertainment, and all these people said, Dragos, you know, we were never able to go back to work in any other way. They didn't write books, but without them, these books would not be written. So, yeah. Any questions?
Over to everybody else in the audience.
Yeah, it's Max here. Dragos, I just asked, you know, you were talking about the SAP implementation of 11 million, and you said 2 million per sprint.
It wasn't a sprint. It was $2 million of work in progress, and they were deploying. They had a weekly release cycle, but it wasn't sprint. They were using Kanban. It was continuous flow. However, they had a time box because of the nature of the work. They would only deploy to production once per week.
Okay, and you mentioned a figure of $2 million per week, right?
Yeah.
So that means the project was implemented in under 6 weeks?
No, that's $2 million per week when they got to that point. I don't remember, it's probably in the book, in the blue book. I don't remember how long it took to implement it.
Yeah, but 11 divided by 2 is 5.5, so it's under 6, right?
Yeah, but they didn't get to it. They didn't start deploying right away, right?
Can you repeat that, please?
I said they did not get to deployment right away. Before they got to that point, and what you are seeing on that whiteboard, there were months and months of work to get there.
Yeah, okay.
So the $1 million, yeah. That was the outcome, should we say. Once they got into a deployment mode and they were able to move things into production, those are the numbers I have from David.
Joe.
I would say that project was probably 1.5 years long at least.
So, Joe?
Yeah, that's right. All right.
Dan, there's actually a question in the chat first before me.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, how do we want to stand up? I think it was with 30 people in 20 minutes. But
yeah,
and I'm happy to go next after that. Yeah.
I think that was more like a hypothetical question, like a rhetoric question. I'd probably ping her and tell her I can show her.
So it's very simple. Axe was also in this situation. So when I started, you know, we've had 20 to 30 people in that room as well, but they were like the people doing the work. They didn't have another, I don't know, dozens of teams or people behind them. It's fairly simple when you use Kanban and you have a board that is up to date. Up front, I usually ask the question, is the board up to date? Then you talk about the blockers. And then really the meeting doesn't take long. However, those 30 people you saw at Corbis, they break down into small groups to solve dependencies, to deal with problems. So after the stand-up is meeting, they will break into small groups to deal with a particular issue. But they don't, if you're used to Scrum stand-ups, we don't do we don't have 30 people saying what they did yesterday, what they do today, and if they have blockers, right? Yeah. The blockers are in front of you. The pink, that was the purpose of that pink color, to jump and to say, okay, we have a few blockers, let's start here. Yeah, who needs help?
There is actually another question in, that might fit into that. What is the path to be a Scrum Master and getting Agile's methods? Milton, would you like to, yeah, you just posted, put more in the chat. Would you like to just explain what you mean?
Hi, I'd like to know the path, which course or which books
You're
is
looking
the
for
best?
books
Yes.
to become a Scrum Master? What is the path to be a Scrum Master and getting Agile methods? Well,
right. So I think the question is about you're a Scrum Master now and you like to learn more methods. And is that what the question is about?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And what books would you recommend and classes to become a bit more broader, probably, in terms of methods? That's how I interpret it. Dragos.
if you're, yeah, so it's been a long time since I've been a Scrum Master, but if you do a Google search, these days, I understand you can earn the certification, remotely or self-study, and then you go and take an exam. There are 2 different governing bodies. You can Google that. Plenty of books. I like Ken Schwaber's original book, but I haven't done Scrum in a very long time. Most organizations I work with, they want to transition to something else. If anybody else can help or provide an answer.
I think saying that, Dragos, is that to further the question, if you're a Scrum Master right now and you're looking to do something else, the blue book that Silke held up before is a good place to start, and the Kanban system design course goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah,
Ax, can you tell us about your book? What did you write about?
Sure, but I know Joe had a question first, and I don't want to take up her time.
Oh yes, Joe, go ahead.
Thanks, Dragos. Thanks, Ax. I'm curious about estimation. And when you showed the 4-month board, when you were with that company for 4 months, was all the work in progress the same size? Like, was work broken down? No. Some was big and some was little.
It was all over the place.
And was it estimated, or did you move towards a uniform estimation, like trying to break it down to be about the same size, or did you go no estimates? How did you do estimation?
In the end, we ended up no estimates. The idea was large or small, tickets had to get done. Why estimate something when you can just start work on it? So it was, again, based more on priority. Our main project service person, Jason, he got to choose what the priority was. If he chose something big, then we work on something big and it takes a little longer. If he chooses something small, and those, while doing those backlog grooming meetings with him, it's like, well, you want us to rewrite this entire module, that's big. You want us to add this button, that's small. And he's like, okay, we can get 3 of these done before we get that done. Which one do you want? And it's more of a conversation with the customer.
Yeah, it's a collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
and
like,
understanding.
if you really want this done, and this is really big. And then there are times of, you want this done, but for this to get done, these other things have to get done. So we're just going to stack them all together, and that's your final thing. These 4 tickets together. Do you want these or do you want this? And it's his choice. He made this choice.
And so you'd have multiple team members working together to deliver something if it was big, and if it was a button, you'd have a single person on it.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, you see, even if you look at the picture, they've had cluster of sticky notes. So a cluster of sticky notes, it means there was a bigger thing that was broken down into functional deliverables. And sometimes what teams do, if they need to experiment, if they need to find out if something works or not, right, they would do that, and then they can just roll back a small piece and do it again, or what have you, do something different.
So my reading of cumulative flow and control charts isn't
Yeah.
as good as it should be to get an answer of when something might be due or be able to be delivered. How do I increase my skills there? You're going to tell me read the blue book, the sections in the blue book, or?
For
So think about this, and let me go back in because I know I wrote something in one of the slides that was related to this, but you want to.
So how do we estimate when something's due if we're not?
We don't. So we don't estimate.
Forecast.
We forecast. We forecast based on past performance.
Okay.
So the way for a forecast to be accurate, you want to have, to some degree, apples to apples, watermelons to watermelons. So if you work on small things, if you work on big things, you have to find a way of how you categorize and how you can create and segment your forecasts for apples, right? So if someone says, okay, I want something, like an apple, it seems like an apple. If, we have 85% confidence we can give it to you in 3 to 5 days. If something is more like a watermelon, you have a different data set and say, we can give it to you in about 3 weeks, right?
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, but
thanks for this
they
post.
didn't have any, sorry.
Anna just actually put a link in the chat. That's one of those that I share most, the Kanban evergreens. I can really highly recommend that one.
Yeah, and just to avoid self-advertisement, because I wrote the article, but it's the voice of David Anderson, because this is the question that comes back in every single class that we do. So how to estimate, how to decide about the size of the ticket. And David answered this question once, so I decided, to make a transcript, put it in better words and share with you.
And that question, does size matter?
Yes.
And I've put up my blog, some areas of my blog posts as well that talk about metrics as well, Joe. So check that out.
Thank you to you all.
Well, generally, I think what I also like to refer to is the Kanbanized block and the NAVE block. They are really good for metrics as well.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Yes. I mean, I just wanted to say the same. Sorry.
All right. Thank you for your patience.
Seems there are no more questions. Are there people? Stay here.
I have a question for Ax. So Ax, what are we going to read in your book about?
Okay, well,
so
I went. So as Dragos talks about, asking the right questions, that's kind of what led me to this story in this book. It was, I had a coworker ask me what one of his team was Agile Scrum, and he's like, it's not working. We're still taking months, to deliver something that should have taken, a shorter time. What's wrong? Why is Agile failing us? And I'm like, my first instinct was, what do your tickets look like? What do you, how is your workflow? How is Jira set up for you? And that got into a whole host of questions. What metrics are you using to determine, what type of estimating are you doing? And, shirt sizes, are you doing shirt sizes, or are you actually doing time estimates, which you're not supposed to in Scrum? And he couldn't answer half those questions. So it's like, okay, maybe Agile's not your problem. Maybe there are other things out there. But what other things are there? Are they part of the methodology? Kanban, Scrum, stream programming, whatever. It's so I started picking those apart, and it's like, okay, for example, making tickets. Is that agile? Well, no, because if you're using the lean philosophy, you kind of need that too. If you're using Scrum, if you're using Kanban, all those use a ticketing system of some sort. So nothing can claim ownership of what that is. Same thing with working with, Dragos mentioned he on his Microsoft team, he went in there, was supposed to fire everybody. But why would you fire employees if they're not toxic? How do you deal with employees that are low performers? Kanban doesn't tell us how to deal with that. Scrum doesn't tell us how to deal with that. That's something beyond all that. So I started pulling together all of the other little ethereal things. It's like, okay, what do I know about this? What can I research about this? And just coagulate them into words. So that's what this book is. It actually goes into, you mentioned what the different other methodologies out there besides Scrum, and someone who wants to be a Scrum Master, who is a Scrum Master, I tried to collect some of them. I have a little write-up on my thoughts on extreme programming, less safe, feature-driven development, Kanban, Scrum, extreme programming, I think I just mentioned. Testing.
Based on something Ed said, and I want to come back to Joe about her question. So being in India for 3 weeks with these folks and staying in the office with them at least 8 to 10 hours a day during the week, I kept track of what they were doing initially as a curiosity, because I didn't want to be impolite and say, what the heck are you doing all day long? Because I keep seeing you on your computers, but like nothing comes out. So I learned, and this is, I believe this is in the case study, I've learned that these engineers were spending 40% of their time in Outlook, sending email, asking clarifications, because every request they were dealing with was unclear. So they started, like I was saying earlier, the pattern of starting something, not having a clue about what the customer wants, and send questions to that customer, and then start something else. And then that's how you end up. That team had 90 things in progress for 6 engineers. So 40% of their time was spent in Outlook. The other 40% was spent estimating. Because they never deliver when they say they're going to deliver, leadership put a process in place that was taking them 2 to 3 days. So they actually had to go. Remember, we're supporting 110 or so in production systems at Microsoft. So they had to go in production and look at code in order to your ask to provide a better estimate. Here is the thing about estimation and about even lean and everything else. If the amount of work in progress is like a yo-yo, sometimes you'll deliver faster, sometimes it will take 10 times the amount of time it took you to deliver something the last time, and you don't know why, and organizations don't understand why. Well, it's that yo-yoing effect. You have this much work in progress, you have this much work in progress. So with Kanban, we regulate all that, and you need to have some constancy in order for your forecasts to be to have some degree of accuracy. And typically we shoot for 85%. But yeah, so if you have engineers to stop spending 80% of their time on not writing code, well, all of a sudden they're going to be writing a whole lot more code and they're going to deliver more work. And it's interesting because there is no such metric. There is no organizational metric to say how much time do we spend in Outlook to deal with unclear, incomplete requirements. How much time do we spend estimating? And it gets that extreme. And by the way, in 10 years of consulting, I've seen a lot of other teams with similar patterns. I saw Warren shaking his head vigorously. I'm not sure if it's cold there or.
I'm just agreeing.
Yes.
I'm trying to get my teams to move away from estimation as well.
So you need data, right? You need data because leadership is nervous. So if you say, I'm not going to estimate. So I don't say that. They ask, hey, how long is it gonna take? I tell them, and I said, I have about 80% confidence that this is going to happen like this. And so what do you mean 80%? I want 100% confidence. So for example, the answer is that if you want 80% confidence, I can tell you it's going to take 21 days. And say, oh no, Dragos, 80% is not good enough. I want 100% confidence. Okay, it's going to take 92 days. Whoa, no, because they think the number is going to come down, right? Or something. It's like, well, it's statistics. Should we talk about statistics, how it works? You want 100% confidence, it means you want to know all the possible cases. And then the tail gets longer. So yeah, you're going to get it here. But the thing is that we see accuracy that 8 out of 10 times we are correct is our forecast. But if you ask teams who are not using forecasting model, they use estimates, whether it's Scrum or not, or Waterfall, and say, when was the last time you delivered on time? They go, never. So I would say 8 out of 10 times is better than never out of 10 times. Yeah, I sympathize with any methodology and any group of people working however you work. Just start to figure out what are the best questions to ask. How are we spending our time? And when we say we focus on work, we don't focus on people. If you think about that picture, I kept repeating, we were with the people with the board in the back. We don't focus on the person who says I'm busy or I'm stuck. We say, let's take a look at the board. Let's see, the work is stuck, right? You know, why do you have so much work in progress? Recently, I was working with the team and we were looking at their backlog, and half of their backlog was 2, 3, and 4 years old. Like, seriously, do you still need this? Then we look at the work in progress. They have one item that was 4 years old. They had 2 or 3 items that were, I believe, 3 years old. And then they had 19 things that were about 2 years old. And again, how many things are you delivering on a regular basis? So let's say they deliver about 8 things per month. Fantastic. Why do you have 45 in progress? And do you see that there are some things that are got to 4 years old? Oh, I'm going to get to them sometime. No, you won't. They're probably not needed anymore. So again, and it's fascinating to me to work with clients and to ask them, how many things do you have in progress? They don't know. And you show them they have hundreds and thousands. It's like, I had no idea. Well, it's in front of you. So that's why the physical board, because the first time I was there, so I told you I went there for a week where Axe used to work. At the end of the first week, we finished the workshop. We agreed on having a Kanban board. We decided to put it on the whiteboard. We did it and say, okay, I'm going to be gone. I'm not coming next week. I'm coming the week after. When I come, you should have all your tickets on the board. So I remember walking in and the CTO sees me, and he was kind of a funny guy. He sees me, he starts laughing. He said, you know, we have to wait a little bit because I sent someone to buy more sticky notes. And I'm like, I took him seriously. Like, what do you mean? He said, well, we ran out of sticky notes.
I remember printing and gluing all of those.
I don't know. That was not my idea. I don't know whose idea it was, but it seemed to work. Anyway, it's hard to put 2,000 sticky notes on a whiteboard. It's not even worth doing it. So, all right.
And just as hard to actually work on that many.
Sorry, Paul.
And just as hard to actually work on that many items.
Yeah. It's funny, there was someone there, Axe, I don't remember his name, but I asked him, I said, you have quite a few things that are 3 to 4 years old. And he said, oh, I'll get to them. Like, he was worried that he's not going to get to them. It's like, no, my point is you shouldn't.
Throw them away.
Shut them down.
Just hit delete. Yeah. Dave, did you have a question, mate?
Yeah, I have a question. So I wrote something that caught my attention before, Dragos. You talked about the board speaking to the, I can't remember what the quote was, I'll put it in the chat.
Having its own voice.
Yeah, having its own voice, which was interesting. And then wondering about now that a lot of folks just aren't in the office now, and they're sort of reluctant to build physical boards.
Yeah.
Because there's just not enough people in the office at the same time, is the way it's perceived, to have it. Because a lot of days, none of them are in the office, but they're having their meeting all over Teams or Zoom or whatever. And so I'm just wondering about, I haven't yet seen a great digital system that has the power to talk in the same way because of the scale that you need and you can't easily get on a screen these days. So I'm just wondering what solutions people are seeing or finding for that problem.
Yeah, so I stopped consulting about a year ago and I joined Adobe, but even before I was still working during the pandemic in consulting, and we start to get better at using Jira, right? The other thing is with the teams we have now, for example, well, everybody's using Kanban. We actually have grown. We have more coaches in different countries, but all the meetings have been virtual for the past year or so. Actually, next week, we're gonna have the first in-person training in Austin. Last time it was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So we'll experiment and see, how that works. But we got really good at Jira and Kanban boards in Jira. The thing is that if you have large teams with a lot of work in progress, it's hard to track. If you don't go through a workshop, through a structured workshop, to have clear exit criteria, to have all these different things in place, then the conversation will be all over, you can focus, you won't get much value out of the board. So part of, we modified how we do static here. We don't call it static actually, but it's very important to establish exit criteria for the columns. And then we co-create the board with each team based on their needs. We don't impose. When I was in consulting, I was in Washington, DC area where there seemed to be a propensity for command and control and telling people what to do. I was working with a client that was our largest client. They were paying millions of dollars in training. We were delivering at the time both Kanban and Scrum training and coaching and consulting, that company I was working for. And I was in a meeting and with the leadership team, and they asked me to build a Kanban board so they can roll it out to about 80 teams. It was like 500 people. And I asked them to make sure I understand their ask. And I said, I'm sorry, I am not doing that. Here is the reason why. And that's not going to work. And my boss was in the room, my boss from the consulting agency. And I can see her in the back almost folding up her chair when I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, are you kidding? Do you know how much money we're going to make doing this? like, and I don't care. It's not going to work for you. And my boss somehow, she did the politics and she came out of it. I refused to do it. Someone else did it for them, some other company, some other vendor. About 8 months later, they come back to us. My boss comes to me. She sees me coming in. I was still living in Seattle, so I flew in. And she sees me, she comes in, she hugs me. She said, I thought you were such an idiot when you said you're not gonna do it. Guess what? This morning, I had 2 messages, several emails. They want you back as soon as possible. And they said they gave up on the idea. It was a disaster. And she's laughing. They paid close to $400,000 in consulting fees to someone to do what they asked for. And it just blew in their face. They want you to go back and they'll do whatever you tell them to do. So we started to do consulting and customer, again, understand the value streams end to end, and help them build the systems they need in order to deliver based on their context for each piece of that organization. So it's hard to say no. I used to be a professional stuntman, so I'm not gonna risk my life for a bucket of money. So as long as I can do it, then and leave to tell about it, then I'll do it. But at least you need to give me shoeboxes to fall on. That's how I used to do it in the old days. You stack empty shoeboxes and then you jump from a 4-story building, and you just have to make sure you land perfectly on your back. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, you can fly for a few seconds, but you need empty shoeboxes. Right?
See, and that's why I
So thank
call
you.
him the hero in the case study. And when I talk about the protagonist, yeah, stuntman.
So, yeah, or look, literally, again, you can do this. But be human, be who you are, and again, what questions are you not asking, right? When you put the work, when you have a board, whether it's physical or virtual, and what I said, this also comes from systems thinking. The board has its own voice. So we want to create this deep democracy where you understand and you have system feedback. You don't have just feedback from the engineers, but you have system feedback. And when you walk by a board that has a lot of a lot of pink stickies, a lot of blockers, it catches even like leadership attention, says, hey, what's going on here? Well, we need this and this and this. So for example, at work recently, in the last year, we were doing a turnaround with a project. And at some point we drew a line in the sand and we said, let's look at past performance for the past 3 months and figure out when this thing is really gonna get done, because we need this out the door. And once we figure out, then we can see if we can play with scope to deliver something faster. So at the end of the day, after we look at 3 months of data, after we cut scope, we figured that it would take about 12 months to deliver. So this was in September. So we thought actually it was, initially we said, yeah, it's gonna take about 12 months. It's gonna be next September that we're going to deliver. Okay, well, now we track data seriously and we're gonna see what the forecasts tell us. At some point, the forecasts went into April of next year. So from September 2022 went into April 2023, I believe. But again, remember that this was in the beginning when we started in the first 2 months as we're working in this new way of flow and Kanban and all these teams. We delivered February 4th, 2 months ago. We delivered in 5 months. So once teams figure out how to work, once teams reduce the amount of work in process, quality gets better. By the way, where Axe used to work, a bug was not just a bug. Well, a bug was done and redone and done again 3 to 4 times, sometimes 5 times. So the quality issue was, it's not just they fix the bug, they deploy, yeah, you caused a different problem. Oh, let's do it again, right? Remember the guy on the wall saying, I wish we've had some better training in Jira and how we do deployments, deployment automation. There's all sorts of quality issues. What happens is, as you reduce the amount of work in progress, you can't cut corners anymore. And those bugs, right, you have more time to understand the root cause. So you have to understand what is the root cause, for all this. When you eliminate the root cause, you start to move faster and faster and faster. So that's part of, I think, the fascination with this method and why people say that they can't work in any other way.
Thanks, Dragos. We have had not many people drop off. And actually the meetup was scheduled for 2 hours because we like to keep it a little bit flexible because we never know how many questions are coming up. We don't want to cut them off because, this is the place where you can all ask all the questions to the experts. And so if there are more questions, feel free to ask them, but we are very aware we are 1.5 hours in. I don't want to cut it off. And it's just great to listen to your stories, Dragos.
That's why I thought when I asked the question, how are you doing? And you said, I'm running out of time. I'm like, I thought we had 2 hours, but I guess maybe I spoke for, again, I woke up 8 minutes before I started talking. So it was a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, not many people dropped off really after 7 o'clock New Zealand time. And I see, when you look at the faces, people are just really enjoying to listen to you. So
I'm no expert, by the way. I don't pretend to be an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm passionate. I love what I do. I look forward to go to work with the people I work with. And when I don't, I'm trying to figure out why and what I can do about it. Because we spend more time with these people than we spend with our own family. Now with COVID, we kind of got to do both maybe, we work from home. But like seriously, you go in the office, the time you spend in traffic, the time you spend at work, how much is it left out of your life? Why would you want to be miserable? Why would you, and that's the whole concept where leadership at all levels comes from. Don't give up, right? Yeah, you are a leader. You can make a difference. You can start to track some different data points and show them to someone. You can talk to the people at work you work with and said, what if we reduce the amount of work in progress a little bit and see what happens, right? You can do some experiments like the scientific method, right? You can do some small experiments. That's how we got, it was curiosity, I would say, of how we got here, how we got to that story. Why the picture with me and those people in front of the restaurant? I have plenty of pictures. Like one of my hobbies used to be photography. I probably have hundreds of pictures and many of them with the team from that first trip to India. But why that first picture outside the restaurant? Because that's when I made the decision. It's like, what's Paul, my boss, right? What's Paul talking about? Like, fire everybody by the end of the year and figure out where you're gonna do this work. They didn't have quality issues, actually. They are not having quality issues, right? It was a perception. The perception was not because of them. The perception was a process. Who was asking them to estimate everything? Who was allowing, and why was someone allowing all those requests to come to the team unclear, with no detail, right? Why? I took that upon myself to correct it. I said, you know what? I'm going to be the gatekeeper for these things. So the very first thing we did was a template. You want a fixed date? Why? You can't ask for something to be a fixed date, or the fixed date being 7 days down the road. Why? Because if I don't ask for it, I'm never gonna get it. Oh no, you will, but there's a lot of demand. So I had to understand all these things and work with stakeholders and negotiate some kind of agreement. The first thing I told the stakeholders of this team is, can you please stop forgetting about estimates? I have data that says that for the past year and a half, we deliver 3 things a quarter, right? So I would ask them politely, what are the next 3 things that you need? What is the next one thing each 5 of you want? Because I had 5 stakeholders, knowing that 2 of you not gonna get anything. And you have to rank it against each other. So come to the meeting, what is one thing that you need? Oh, by the way, before, each one of these stakeholders had a top 10 list. That's how they work. Here is my top 10, here is my top 10, here is my top 10. What does a team of vendors do? They start 50 things. Because people are saying, hey, where is my stuff? Oh, it's in progress. It doesn't work. What's the reality? 3 things a quarter. What are the next 3 things you need for the next quarter? Literally. And people were looking at me like, I fell from a tree, or from the moon, or from the fourth floor building with no shoeboxes, right? It's like, are you nuts? you bang your head? I need all this work done. I said, in the history of this team, in a year and a half, they never deliver more than 3 things per quarter. And it's not even 1 per month. Sometimes it's nothing for 2 months, and then they have 3 things done, right? So I said, is this reality? And they said, yes, it is. Okay, what are the next 3 things? And 5 of you have to fight for them. So that's kind of where we started the conversation. And, I'm dramatizing a little bit. I didn't tell my boss I was doing this, but I was meeting with my stakeholders. Hey, what do you want? Maybe we'll take turns. Maybe we'll give you something now and you're gonna get something next, but let me figure this out. And I said, I'll figure it out. I can promise you that much, but let me figure it out. I just started in this role, right? So we have to be pragmatic. I mean, but I'm no hero. I'm no genius. When I go to a workshop, I pretty much admit it and say, I'm here to learn as well. Even if it's a public workshop, I'm here to learn about your business. I'm here to learn about what bothers you, right? And then let's find the answers together. Let's find better questions, and then we'll find the answers together. So nothing really stops you. That's why I do this presentation the way I do it, to get down to this message, just look for the lead. Where is the lead, right? Maybe we talk about leadership at all levels and people, it's hard to understand in some cultures. Fine, make it about lead. Where is the lead? Let's take the lead out of our work. Yeah.
I really like that, Dragos. I think one thing that I'm taking away from what you're talking about today is also your genuine curiosity to know what's actually happening in the system and to try and, you know, improve the lives and outcomes for people.
But you see, you all are very good at this. We all are very good at this. This is how we live our lives. This is how we got to where we've got. You know, we got married, we got children. Like, what the heck did I know about raising children? I have 3 now. So you figure it out along the way. You know, work is not a whole lot different. And you have people sometimes in a position of authority who tell you about the process. It's not that they know any better. They just don't know what to do and they may be afraid, right? So it's good to understand these fears and say, how can I help this person understand better? So then I go and I say, you know, again, look, we, you know, for 1.5 years or so, we only deliver 3 things. To schedule 50 and to give you, because they were coming up with these top 10 things, there's 50, and then there's 50 estimates you have to do. So when the hell is any work gonna be done? I only have 3 developers and 3 testers at the end of the day, right, in that team. So let's be pragmatic about it. So when I realized I was really opportunistic here, you understand, this has nothing to do with engineering and software development. I was very opportunistic when I realized they're spending 40% of their time estimating and 40% of their time sending emails. I said, okay, I'll figure out the email part. I know that that's going to take a while for me to get stakeholders to provide requests with clarity. But if these people would stop estimating, I get 40% more capacity. It's like hiring 1.2 developers on the team. So I'm like, how can I stop this? So then I'm like, So it's kind of like that curiosity that I export all the data from the system where we've had it, I put it in a spreadsheet, I create a pivot table, and all of a sudden, without having any knowledge, I was not trying to create a forecast model, but the data is speaking to me, like the board is can be speaking to you. The data is staring me in the face in a pivot table. 3 things, or 1 this month, 1 this month. I said, what if I look at it on a quarterly basis? I put it in a quarterly basis and like magic, boom, 3 things per quarter with precision. Like, why do we have 90 things in progress? Why do we promise? Why do we estimate 50 things? It's like, doesn't make any sense. It's like, I know. Okay, stop estimating, team. Customer, 3 things per quarter. Here's the data, right? I had no idea. I've never done that before. Okay. So yeah, no expertise required. Just be yourself and, you know, stop lying. Stop trying to tell what people are, you know, people are asking us to do things that sometimes doesn't make sense, and we're afraid, and we try to give them an answer to protect ourselves versus trying to understand what is possible and why, right?
Maybe it is a good time to wrap up with the words that Lillian also just got into the chat, and that everybody liked, that you said the board has its own voice. And the other one I think people liked was lose the lead, lead instead.
Lose the lead, lead instead. Yeah.
Yes. So if there really are no more questions, I give it 2 seconds.
Okay. I
Anna?
don't have a question, but I have a comment. Because in Kanban maturity model, we have a lot of decision filters. So I think that these 2, at least about the lead and the lead, should become one of the decision filters. So Dragos, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch through this recording, write up what you have said, and I will send it back to you, and we'll make sure that it will be written up.
Okay.
Dragos, here you go. You're again someone who,
more work,
you know,
more work for me. Anna, I volunteered to do a meetup with her in Poland. I don't know, in June, I think.
It will be global. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. Those who don't know Anna, she's the product manager of the Kanban maturity model. also an accredited Kanban trainer, and she helps to develop all the Kanban classes as well. Is that right, Anna? Anything to add?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. So I think I will stop the recording here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Those who want to hang out, Dan and I will stay for a bit if you have more questions. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'll stop the recording now.